Welcome in TNC Radio.live. It's Wednesday night. We're live with the Clutch Time Sports. Usually it's Anderson and Banker. Today it's going to be Kelly and Banker. I'm Tom Kelly, going to be with Josh Banker. Ivan Anderson has the night off. Had some family stuff to deal with tonight. You know, it's that time of year, and sometimes, well, those family obligations got to come first.
When we would never, ever take anybody away from that either. So,
that's right.
Hope Ivan and everybody over there is doing well and taken care of. And I know you and I were talking off air about this, but it's amazing how not only is this time of year always so busy work-wise for a lot of us, but then you throw in all the extra social obligations at the end of the year. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
This past weekend was kind of our big weekend. We had a big Christmas party that I was hosting. My wife had a big Christmas concert where she was singing, you know. And so this whole, I don't know, for several weeks, maybe months, I've kind of been looking at that last weekend as I just got to get past that. And we did.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of a little bit of taking the foot off the accelerator now and enjoying that. We're going to be with you tonight, and then we're going to take off the next couple of weeks and then come back on January the 4th, all refreshed and ready to go with the beginning of the year. But Josh, something happened in the last, 72 hours or so?
That kind of caught basically the last 24 hours, really.
Yeah, it caught our attention, I think. Former Astro, Carlos Correa, has found a new home.
And I couldn't be more happy about it, actually. What's interesting is that as a San Francisco Giants fan over the years, I have come to have heartbreak when it comes to free agent signings, but I've lived long enough to know that, you know, you just stick around long enough and you're going to see some interesting things. And obviously the time will tell as to whether or not this is going to be a good deal for the Giants. But if you can't get Aaron Judge, I don't know who else I would rather have at the top of the list for my, Santa's wish list than Carlos Correa, because he plays a premium position in shortstop, and the Giants already have a good defensive shortstop in Brandon Crawford. But what I find horribly ironic about this, and maybe it's not ironic, but so my brother and I like to try to get to a different stadium here and there every year if we can that we haven't seen. And last year we happened to go to Minnesota for the first time.
Wow.
And what a beautiful ballpark that is. But we got to see Carlos Correa up close and personal, and it's just nice and refreshing to see the Giants get a guy that has a bat that you have to game plan around for. It doesn't feel like they've had that since Barry Bonds. And even though they had 3 World Series in the 2010s, that was almost always revolving around their pitching staff, whether it was Bumgarner or Lincecum and Kane and all those guys. And yes, Buster Posey was a great bat, but you never really had the feeling that he was that menacing presence that, let's say, Barry Bonds had back in the mid-2000s. So it's kind of interesting to see the Giants actually step up to the plate, absolutely intended.
Yeah.
And see the Giants go fishing and get their guy.
Well, yeah, and so I'm going to throw a little water on this, but it's not on Carlos Correa. I'm concerned about these huge multi-year contracts at a position that doesn't hold up well over time. If you go back and you look at, I don't know what you like to look at as far as baseball stats are concerned, but just we'll pick Simple WAR, and outside of a guy named Cal Ripken, nobody in the history of baseball has done well at that position after age 38.
And it's funny, as a Giants fan, I've seen all the memes you could possibly imagine over the last 24 hours about Carlos Correa going down to first base with a walker by the end of this contract.
Yeah.
Because he would be 41 years old if he actually stays through the finality of this contract. But
well, why wouldn't he?
Why wouldn't he? You're right. I mean, but the question to me is, or not even the question, but the statement I think that this contract is made for me is that the Giants are investing in a franchise player to the point that you might be able to attract other big name guys. And yes, there's money tied up between him and a bunch of other players, but the fact that we talked about this last week, actually, Tom, if you may remember, how there was a great point made by Steve Phillips about how everything has changed because of the way the Phillies got to the World Series this year. You don't have to necessarily play for first place anymore. You just got to get at least that wild card.
Yeah.
The third team in there, and you still have a chance to get to the World Series.
And I get that, and that's great. But I really wonder, as an Astros fan, I'm glad we haven't gotten any of these big multi-year deals with players that are going to be in their early 60s by the time the deal is complete. And it's not quite that bad, but they're going to be in their 40s. And they all have these multi-year, no trade, no opt-out, you're stuck with them. And I'm glad that the Astros haven't gotten in on any of those yet, because I get the feeling that 5 years from now, if we have not jumped in on a whole bunch of those, there are going to be some teams that are like, yeah, we're completely out of budget at this point, and we're paying these guys, we've got three guys that between the three of them, we're paying $200 million, and we can't really do much more, and that's it. And
it's interesting because I think you and I kind of both understand this very well, being an Astros fan and me being a Giants fan. You're at a point where the Giants were in the early 2010s, in that a lot of your talent and your mainstays are homegrown. Mm-hmm. You've got the Bregmans and the Yordan Alvarez's and the Jeremy Peñas and even the Gurriels at that point, and Tucker and everybody else. So you're not necessarily one that has to go out and make this big free agent splash to try to replenish, what you had. Now, you may be in the same situation the Giants are, in say 5-6 years. Who knows?
No, that's what I'm saying. We won't be, because we won't have all this money tied up in a couple of guys that are too old to play.
Well, we'll see. I mean, Yordan Alvarez isn't old yet. Neither is Kyle Tucker or some of these other guys.
But again, we don't have.
You would think are going to command some money at some point here,
right? But I think the secret to the long-term success of a franchise moving forward isn't who you lock up for the next 5 years and then have to pay them out for 5 years after that. Is who can you lock up for the next 5 years and then find new talent 5 years after, for the 5 years
for sure.
after that.
Yeah, there's always the blend that you have to have between homegrown talent and free agency.
How are the Giants? How are the Yankees? How are the Phillies? How are some of these teams going to be able to do that if they don't have money like Steve Cohen?
Well, what I find interesting is that in the grand scheme of things here, because it's a 13-year deal, and I haven't looked up to see how the year-by-year structure of the salary is actually going to turn out. But
I'm not sure they even released that yet. I've been looking for that, and I haven't seen it yet.
And I think it averages about $28 million a year as it sits, with the 13 years for $350 million.
That'd be the AVP, but
right. If we're just going on that average, in 5 years, $28 million for a guy that's only 33 years old in his prime could be a steal.
Oh, and I have no doubt about that. I think it's a great deal for the next 5 years, and I think it's a horrible deal for the 5 years after that.
It very well could be. And
I think for the next 5 years,
what I would like to know too is, is there an opt out, and when is that, and who has that option?
No options on this deal. None.
Okay.
And no trade clause, and it's very similar to the other big contracts that have been signed this offseason too, with Turner, with Judge. They all have basically the same structure, which is you're ours for life, and we're getting married.
Well, and I know we only have a couple short minutes here left in this segment, but it is interesting too that this follows on the heels of what happened with Xander Bogaerts last week. I was stunned to see that move. That one surprises me even more than Carlos Correa going to the Giants.
Yeah, we need to talk about that one because that one, well, as one executive said, and I'm kind of the same way, but we got to talk about it. It leaves me speechless. What the heck?
Yeah.
What is Boston thinking? What are they doing?
It's a great question.
I mean, you and I are we're talkers about baseball. We don't actually have the role of general manager on any team, though I am an excellent fantasy baseball general manager. I'll just have you know that. But I don't actually control any team, and even as an outsider, what the heck?
Right.
I mean, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know that they have, Rafael Devers still give some money to as well. He's coming up for a new contract, but I'm just surprised that, especially the fact that happened after Aaron Judge's signing. Like, you would think of all teams that would be responding, it would be Boston.
Yeah, I'm just, and maybe, I don't know. We'll talk about it.
We can take a break and come back and talk about some more. Who knew December baseball?
Yeah,
right here at Clutch Time Sports.
We'll be right back. You're listening to Clutch Time Sports on TNCRadio.live. Tonight it's Kelly and Banker. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Kathy DeCaro is nothing short of amazing. She not only drives the world's biggest truck as a heavy equipment operator in northern Alberta, Canada. She's an international motivational speaker and the author of Dream Big, an autobiography about overcoming a lifetime of trauma and abuse that led to dreams of success. Kathy inspires people the world over to change their lives and improve their self-worth. Her book will change your life. She's passionate about personal growth and believes anyone can change their circumstances and overcome their obstacles if they believe in themselves. Her life will amaze you and seriously inspire you. Be sure to order a copy of her book, Dream Big, on Amazon.com.
This blog on TNCRadio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. Inspections for truck drivers. Getting stopped for an inspection in the middle of a delivery is a situation every truck driver dreads. Inspections are time-consuming and interfere with the driver's schedule for delivering their load on time. However, they are essential for regulating safety conditions for everyone on the road. There's 6 different levels of DOT roadside inspections. Each level has a unique set of requirements and can happen at any time. It's important to be familiar with all 6 levels of DOT inspections, so if you have one, you can pass. Level 1, North American Standard Inspection. The Level 1 inspection is often referred to as a full inspection and is the most thorough. There are 37 steps to a Level 1 inspection. During this inspection, the driver's credentials and the vehicle will be examined. Because the Level 1 inspection has so many steps, it does take a significant amount of time. A good way to help speed up the process of a Level 1 inspection is by staying on top of driving requirements and proper truck maintenance. Here's some things the inspector will check during a Level 1 inspection. Medical examiner certificate, alcohol and drug use, daily logs, hours of service, HOS documentation, seat belt use, driver and vehicle inspection reports, brake system, chopping devices, exhaust system, truck frame, fuel system, turn signals, brake lamps, tail lamps, headlamps, lamps on projecting loads, safe loading, steering mechanism, suspension, tires, van and open-top trailer bodies, wheels and rims, windshield wipers, hazardous material, HM requirements. If you're a hazard hauler, have your shipping papers ready. Level 2. Walk-around driver vehicle inspection. Level 2 inspections are a less invasive process and are also the most common. They're similar to the Level 1 inspections, except there is less involvement in the vehicle inspection part. During the Level 2 inspection, the examiner will do a walk-around driver vehicle inspection. They'll check everything that's in a Level 1, but will not physically get under the vehicle. Level 3, driver-only inspection. The Level 3 inspections are the second most common type of inspection. Since the inspection doesn't include the vehicle, it can go relatively quickly. A driver will be expected to present a record of duty status, that's RODS, driver's license, hazmat requirements, medical card and waiver, skill performance evaluation certificate, vehicle inspection report, HMDG requirements, and HOS documentation. Level 4. Special inspections. A Level 4 inspection is a one-time inspection of a specific trend within the industry. This type of inspection happens when the Department of Transportation wants to do further research on industry issues. Level 5. Vehicle-only inspection. A Level 5 inspection is like Level 1, but the driver is not present during the inspection. During this inspection, the examiner will check everything that's in the Level 1 inspection except those relevant to the driver. Level 6 Enhanced NAS Inspection for Radioactive Shipments. The Level 6 inspection is only relevant to drivers that haul radioactive materials. These inspections are put into place to ensure that drivers who haul radioactive material are following proper safety protocol. This infoblog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
For the latest in traffic, weather, and information, catch the Morning Grind weekdays right here on tncradio.live. Welcome back in tncradio.live. Mr. Anderson is not with us tonight, so that leaves me along with Josh. And Josh, great to have you in here this evening. I wanted to take a moment, Josh, before we get too far down into talking more about what's going on with these the top of very, very top of the free agents that have signed so far or are supposed to be signing here pretty soon. And we're going to make the assumption that even though a couple of these deals actually have not been 100% confirmed and approved by the league office, we're going to assume that they're all good and legit and going to happen.
Right.
You know, the big deal, of course, was all about Aaron Judge, and he signed a 9-year, $324 million contract. 9 years, $324 million. That's $36 million a year. One of the top contracts in the history of baseball. And on opening day, he will be 30 years old. So keep that in mind. Trey Turner, opening day, he'll be 29 years old. Signed an 8-year, $272 million contract, annual value of $34 million. Carlos Correa, annual value there is $33.1 million. Oh, I'm sorry. Nope. This one's projected. They don't have the new information in here. Give me his numbers again. 13 years.
350 million.
Yeah. See, the projection was 8 years, 265.
Okay.
With an annual value of 33.1. Then we've got Xander Bogaerts. And we're going to come back and talk about that one here in just a minute. Dansby Swanson remains unsigned, which is perplexing right now. Jacob deGrom, he ended up in Texas. Carlos Rodon, not signed yet. Not signed yet. Brandon Nimmo, who quite personally didn't really see him as a top 10, but that's just my personal opinion. And he got re-signed there in New York. Verlander ended up in New York. And then there's Kodai Senga. And and then listed in here, number 13, and signed by the Astros, Jose Abreu.
Yep.
Wilson Contreras moves from Chicago over to St. Louis. And let me see if there's anything else that jumps out at me here. Yankees held on to Rizzo, which, quite frankly, I was hoping the Astros went in with Rizzo, but they ended up, I think, with the next best thing, which is Abreu.
I don't think you're any disappointed in that at all.
Yeah. I'm not upset by that. And within the last couple of hours, you may or may not have seen this one yet. Thor.
Yeah, it's going to the Dodgers.
Okay, so Noah Syndergaard goes to the Dodgers. Does he have to shave his beard as a Dodger? I can't remember what
I don't think so.
Okay.
No. If he was a Yankee, he would.
Yeah. I know the Yankees still have that rule. I'm not sure if any other teams do. But so with all of that in mind, what jumps out at you as really good? I'll just tell you right up front. The Turner deal, I think, is a steal. Going to the Phillies.
Well, he's back in the National League East, where he spent most of his career when he was with the Nationals, and he's going to be playing in a small ballpark again. And he's at the site of the probably most infamous meme-worthy slide of all time. I don't know if you've seen the pop-up slide that he's had at home plate there in Philly and back there again. I don't disagree with you. I see him ultimately more as a second baseman, perhaps, than a shortstop long term. But for all the speed and the pop in his bat is underrated, I believe. If he stays healthy, I pair him up with Bryce Harper for the next 7-8 years. I would take that.
And the rest of that lineup, there's nothing wrong with that lineup. We did well against them in the World Series, but they made us work. They're a tough young team, and I haven't felt this good about the Phillies since Lenny Dykstra was patrolling the outfield there. I mean, it's
well, and they did win, World Series there at it was 2009.
Yeah, but
when they had Halladay and all those guys. But
yeah, I felt like they kind of fell into that one as opposed
could
to.
Be. Well, they had some good talent on that team with Rollins, Utley, and Ryan Howard. I mean, it's
not a bad team by any means. I just this team, though, I think if it wasn't for the Mets, I'd be saying watch out, Philly's going to roll here for a few years. But Steve Cohen, he's going to get whatever he wants. He is the 800-pound gorilla.
Yep. And going back to the question you were posing about what stands out to me most, we kind of talked about Xander Bogaerts a little bit there before the break. To me, I know the onus is on whether or not Boston wants to try to stay in the race with New York and even Toronto for that matter. And even Baltimore has really stepped its game up over the last year and a half. And Tampa seems to always be good no matter what names are on the back of their jerseys. But as a West Coast baseball fan, the Padres are just an absolute enigma to me. And they've gone out and got Juan Soto. They've still got Fernando Tatis Jr. They've got Manny Machado. Now you add, Xander Bogaerts to the mix. 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, they had kind of the same similar sort of team. Did a whole lot of buying, and then within 2 years, they were selling off pieces, but pennies on the dollar. So what's going to happen again with this team?
No, because everybody they bought back then and all the deals that they bought a bunch of people who had just finished being great. I don't think that's their problem this time. There's not a lot of Matt Kemps in here that, you go, well, 2 years ago.
Eric Hosmer.
Yeah.
But don't forget, they had Rizzo back in the day, too, and could have waited on him. Yeah. Gave him away.
Well, I don't think that's what they're going to do this time, but I love this lineup. Tatis, Soto, Bogaerts.
On paper, they'll beat anybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. Nola's slowing down a little bit, as far as being, I wouldn't call him an elite catcher, but, he's strong. I mean, there's nobody on this team that I look at and go, and I still think they're not done. I think that, stick in a JD Martinez in that lineup in DH. Oh my gosh. Somebody with, who's just a good, steady bat. Michael Brantley, somebody like that. and you're going to just blow away that division.
Especially from the left side, I think they could really use somebody in that regard.
Yeah.
They did lose Sean Watt.
Still with me? And we may have lost Josh for a minute. Yeah, they did make... But I think where we wanted to go here was to talk about what really happened with Red Sox Nation. And Red Sox Nation is in an absolute tizzy. They're very frustrated. And with good reason, I think. So we'll talk about that. We're going to take a break and let Josh get reconnected here. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about Red Sox Nation. Then we're going to shift gears, get into talking about bowl season. Bowl season coming up right here, all on TNCRadio.live. This is Clutch Time Sports. Stay tuned.
Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Kortman every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. As a professional driver, you are always being told about the importance of physical fitness, your health. But what about mental fitness? On the show each week, we take on a new topic, from loneliness to the power of gratitude to how to build strong relationships, all from the perspective of a driver's life. It's every Monday on TNC Radio Live at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's Building Strong Minds.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Kortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. I promised you in part one of this video that we'd talk a little bit more about enabling versus helping. Let's pretend that you have a son, and this son has a wife and 2 kids, and he's working 2 full-time jobs, and sometimes has a 3rd gig whenever he can. And you say to this son, I'd like to help you get in your first house. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to match every dollar you can come up with, and together we'll put a down payment for you on a new house. Are you helping or enabling? Most people would say helping. He's doing everything he possibly can. But you also have a daughter. She's in her 5th semester of college. She's a freshman. And she's kind of taking her sweet time dropping classes. And she's only compiled about 12 credits thus far. And she says, Daddy, the lease is up. I need you to sign for me again for this wonderful, plush apartment. Sounds like an opportunity to enable to me. Why? Because she's not doing everything she possibly can to help herself. That's probably where a parent has to step in and say, time to come home and let's go to community school or some kind of a change, because I'm no longer willing to enable. In my book, Your Mind, an Owner's Manual for a Better Life, I wrote a little ditty on enabling, and it goes something like this. When you call him in sick, he's been drinking with Rick, that's enabling. When she's living for thrills, you've been paying her bills, that's enabling. I know what you're thinking, keep your day job, Kortman. But here's the thing. Help people as long as they're doing everything they can to help themselves. Otherwise, stay out of the way and let them do what they can to help themselves.
Frontlane introduces Impulse, the world's first collision alert system for the driver behind you when you have to brake hard. Impulse uses ultra-bright pulsing red LEDs to alert drivers behind you who might not be giving their full attention to the road. Using amazing accelerometer technology and a battery that will last for years, Impulse installs in minutes, fits nearly any vehicle, and never requires additional wiring. Drivers react 50% faster, helping to protect you and your passengers. Learn more by visiting www.frontlane.com/impulse. That's www.frontlane.com/impulse. Approved by all 50 states. Impulse by Frontlane.
Welcome back in, TNCRadio.live. I have no words. Well, we got to have some words here. That's what one MLB evaluator said about the Red Sox signing a $90 million deal with Masataka Yoshida, who is a very serviceable player, right, in Japan. I mean, pretty good guy.
Sure.
You know, everybody seems to like him.
We'll see.
He's no Ohtani.
Or Ichiro.
Or Bogarts,
or
for that
whatever.
matter. But so what's going on? I mean, on the one hand, I looked at the Bogarts thing and I thought, you know, at a time when every team is losing its fiscal head, maybe the Red Sox are the only people in the room thinking straight.
But they also signed Kenley Jansen as well.
But then they signed $90 million for Yoshida. What?
Try. Yeah.
Plus
exactly.
the posting fee. I mean, that doesn't include the posting fee. Which is, you know, some number of millions. Let's see, what is that? $15.4 million that they had to toss in on top of that.
It's funny, if you would have said this was Chicago doing all this, the Cubs, I would have said, Chicago will Chicago.
Yeah.
But Boston actually has a pretty good track record over the last 15 years. So maybe there is some method to their madness at this point. I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, because they've also held on to a guy like Chris Sale for so long with all his injuries, and he's tied up a bunch of money.
Well, but we got to remember too that that Yoshida hit 20 home runs last year in Japan ball. Well, that translates to what?
Who knows?
Maybe 20 home runs in Boston. I don't think this translates to the guy's just going to be hit for average. I got no doubt. Okay, but and so he's more like an Ichiro kind of guy. But I think he's Ichiro Jr.
Maybe. I mean, even Ichiro Jr. is a pretty tough pill to swallow. I mean, you got to really fight to be anywhere near the class of Ichiro. So I don't know. What I find fascinating is by the time we come back in our next show on January 4th, what kind of baseball free agency discussion are we going to have?
Well, I get that they didn't want to put 280 into Bogarts, but I don't know. We'll see. I just don't see. I don't see that working. I just don't. And maybe, like I said, maybe they're going to surprise all of us, and they end up being the smart ones in the room. But
maybe they end up getting Dansby Swanson for a better value than somebody like Bogart, so that they can re-sign Rafael Devers to a bigger long-term contract.
And there's always that possibility too that there's something we don't know here. That's what I started to allude to earlier. Maybe there's just maybe X and the ownership just don't get along.
Maybe Carl Yastrzemski's got another grandson out there that we don't know about yet.
Maybe so. Yeah,
we could talk this whole hour about free agency for baseball for sure, but we should go bowling.
Yeah, let's shift into the clutch here and go bowling. Absolutely. I don't have a bowling sound effect. That would have been a great time for a bowling sound effect, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, this season in effect is the playoffs for college football. Yeah, even though there is a college football playoff.
So within the next 48 hours, we begin our less than that even. The first game is Friday. Let's see, that would be what, 9:30 your time?
8:30 our time.
8:30 your time. Friday morning, we begin the season with Miami versus Alabama. That's Miami, Ohio versus the University of Alabama, Birmingham. I mean,
I like the way you phrase that. Well done.
So that's the Homelanders Bahamas Bowl. Okay. Then we got UTSA versus Troy. Okay, that one's over in Orlando. But here's the one that kind of cracks me up, and I don't know, maybe this was there last year and I just missed it. The Jimmy Kimmel Bowl.
Yes.
The Jimmy Kimmel gets his own bowl?
He does, and they have had it for a couple of years now.
Really?
And it's interesting. One of my really good friends is a big Fresno State guy, and grew up in the Central Valley out there in California here, and he was looking to possibly get to that game, but Washington State, Fresno State still actually command a pretty decent, dollar for going to see somebody at SoFi. So he's going to spend that money and watch it from home.
Well, and SoFi is the best thing that happened to Inglewood, California since Vince Vega died. So, how is that for a reference?
Wow,
How's that for a movie
you went
reference?
deep sea fishing on that one.
Yeah. If you know that one, I'll be really. You know who that is? Vincent Vega. Inglewood,
go ahead.
California.
Sorry.
Do you get that reference?
I don't actually.
Pulp Fiction.
Yes. I know I've heard that before.
My brother from Inglewood. So, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are some other intriguing games actually coming. I'm intrigued by Florida and Oregon State. I know Florida's not all that they've been cracked up to be this year per se, but as a former Oregonian myself, lived there through junior high and high school, just to see Oregon State kind of back into a little bit of prominence here again is kind of exciting, and they definitely wrecked things for a lot of the Pac-12 teams, I think, by beating Oregon in that regular season.
Oh yeah,
finale.
That blew a lot of stuff up. So Oregon State versus Florida, of course. Florida down a quarterback.
Yep.
Yeah.
And our serious condolences also out to the family of Mike Leach, Mississippi State head coach. That I don't know about you, Tom, but that he's a guy that I've known quite a while, not personally or anything, but he was out here on the West Coast with Washington State for a number of years. But always one of those guys that you could always count on for something verbally that would make you scratch your head or make you laugh. And he's that whole news with him passing away yesterday just blew me away out of nowhere. Yeah.
Reports coming out today that they've named his assistant as interim now through at least the end of the year. Probably has a hook in the long-term job, but just a shock for everybody. Hard to pick up and go play after something like that.
And they've decided to play their bowl game, kind of in his honor for sure. I understand that, but you're right. It'd be kind of hard to just get inspired for something like that.
Yeah. One bowl game that kind of intrigues me too, and I may have slept through this last year as well. The Lending Tree Bowl. Rice versus Southern Miss. Do you know why that's an interesting bowl game?
Tell me.
Not based on their record, based on their academics.
Okay.
Oh. Okay. So here's a couple of teams where the players did really, really well academically. Not the strongest football teams in the world, but hey, let's go out there and we can play a lot of smart guys on the field that day. And so I kind of want to see it just for that. It's getting ESPN prime time, 5:45 Eastern time, ESPN prime time on Saturday. So I'm kind of happy that they're doing that for those guys.
Well, knowing that this is our final show before the end of 2022, we might as well get ourselves out on the limb of that lending tree and go down to the New Year's Eve games as we get into the college football playoffs. You've got TCU and Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia. You got any feelings one way or the other?
Michigan and Georgia end up in the final game. No
shot for TCU, you think? No shot for Ohio State?
I don't think so. but you never know. You never know what's going to happen when Ohio State plays Michigan. You never know.
Oh, Ohio State plays Georgia.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Well, if Ohio State and Michigan end up playing, I'm saying you don't know what's going to happen.
True.
There.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but Georgia's just so dominant at this point.
They're good. They are very good.
Can they be beat? I mean, people always laugh and say, the best college football team could never stand up against the worst NFL team. I'm not sure that's true right now. I think Georgia kills the Texans.
Very well could be.
I mean, really, those are some big boys there, and they know how to play and they know how to win, and it's awfully hard to figure out how to stand against them. Alabama versus Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl, that's going to be an interesting game.
For sure.
Mississippi State versus Illinois, LSU versus Purdue. There's going to be a lot of good games that weekend.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're a big-time football fan, the Rose Bowl this year, Utah versus Penn State. Now, on surface, you're like, that'd be interesting. Here's a couple of teams that both of those teams throughout the year were both considered underdogs when they should have been shoe-ins, and shoe-ins when they should have been underdogs. And so I don't think we know about either team, really. So I'm kind of anxious to see what things are going to look like between Utah and Penn State. And then finally, we can't forget good old USC against Tulane. Is that going to be a game? Yeah. I don't think that's going to be a game, is it?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's always that elephant in the room too. Which team is going to be without certain players who are starting to declare for their eligibility for next year's NFL draft?
Yeah, Tennessee wide receiver Hyatt is dropped out for the draft and declared for the draft, which. That's something, too, that's worth talking about. So let's talk a little bit about NFL, where we are with the NFL, and some of the early prognosticators now coming out talking about who's going to be grabbing what in the draft. It's not too early to talk about. It's never too early to talk about the NFL draft in my book. So we'll hit that.
Especially when Bryce Young is going to be on your Texans next year.
Well, maybe so. We'll talk about that and more right here on TNCRadio.live. Stay with us.
Join Tom Kelly and the rest of the team each day on the Morning Grind. Then stay tuned for an encore presentation of last night's Landline Now. Weekdays on TNCRadio.live. This info blog on TNCRadio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. Everything truck drivers need to know about sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is an issue that affects 1 out of 3 truck drivers. Truck drivers who drive tired may be unaware of how much their lack of sleep affects their driving. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration attributes 2.2% of all driving accident fatalities to drowsy driving. Well, there's not a law in place that requires truck drivers to get testing for sleep apnea. If you suspect you have sleep apnea, stay with us to learn more about sleep apnea and how it can affect truck drivers. What is sleep apnea? Sleep apnea is a potentially serious sleep disorder that causes you to have pauses in your breathing or take shallow breaths during sleep. It's an extremely common issue that affects millions of people in the United States. If you snore loudly during the night or still feel tired after a full night's rest, you might have sleep apnea. According to the Mayo Clinic, the main types of sleep apnea are obstructive sleep apnea, the more common form that occurs when throat muscles relax, central sleep apnea, which occurs when your brain doesn't send proper signals to the muscles that control breathing, complex sleep apnea syndrome, also known as treatment-emergent central sleep apnea, occurs when someone has both obstructive sleep apnea and central sleep apnea. Symptoms of sleep apnea. According to the Sleep Foundation, all 3 types of sleep apnea share certain common symptoms: disrupting breathing, in which a person's respiration can become labored or even stop for up to a minute at a time; excessive daytime sleepiness; morning headaches; irritability; limited attention span, or difficulty thinking clearly. Many of these symptoms arise because of poor sleep and decreased oxygen levels that occur as a result of interrupted breathing. Some additional symptoms are connected to obstructive sleep apnea: snoring, including snoring that's especially loud and involves gasping, choking, or snorting that may cause a person to briefly wake up; morning sore throat or dry mouth; frequent need to wake up to urinate. Causes and treatment options for sleep apnea. Sleep apnea occurs when the airway becomes blocked while sleeping. Here are some common causes of an increase in airway blockage: being overweight, sedative medication, alcohol, family history of sleep apnea, smoking cigarettes, sleeping on your back, nasal congestion. If you suspect you have sleep apnea, reach out to your doctor to get a treatment plan going. Avoiding treating your sleep apnea can result in losing the ability to operate a commercial motor vehicle. Most often, treatment plans will require you to have a CPAP machine in your truck. The CPAP machine helps pump oxygen to you while you sleep. In addition to using the CPAP machine, your doctor may recommend exercising, losing weight, or using different oral appliances that help hold open your airways. As a truck driver, it's crucial to take care of yourself because trucking is such a difficult and demanding job. At times, it can be challenging to take care of your health. Sleep apnea is a real issue in the trucking industry. We encourage all drivers to be aware of the symptoms and to get help if they suspect they have sleep apnea. This info blog was brought to you by The Truckers Network on app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
Don't forget, you can hear all of our TNC Radio primetime shows again on our podcasts. Just go to tncradio.live/podcasts or search for tncradio.live wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back, TNC Radio.live. Happy to have you with us here in the afternoon or evening. It's Wednesday evening. We're live talking sports, and special salute out to our drivers who are out making things happen. Remember, nothing is in your office right now that didn't get there by truck at some point or another.
Or in your Christmas stockings or
That's
under
right.
your tree
That's
at
right.
this point.
Yep. It's all there because of our drivers, and we love them. And please be careful out there. Rough weather east of the Mississippi tonight, and north as well. It's rough out there.
Yeah, we got a good amount of rain over this weekend here, even in California. It's we don't get chilling temperatures like a lot of places outside of here, but we were in the low 40s last night, which is pretty darn chilly. We don't get any cloud cover out here. It could still get pretty darn cold.
Yeah.
But we got 6 minutes or so.
Yeah,
you wanted to talk about some NFL. We were talking about the early prognostications, perhaps, for the NFL draft.
Not everybody's sold that Alabama's young quarterback is the first guy off the board. And you know how this works, right? Every year, everybody gets excited about a particular person, and they say, oh, he's going to be number one, he's going to be... And then some stuff happens in the offseason, and by the time things roll around, he ends up being not the third pick at that position. And sometimes that works out well for a team, and sometimes not so much.
We call that the Aaron Rodgers effect, I believe.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sold on, and I'm having a brain fart right now. What's his name?
Bryce Young?
Yeah, Bryce Young. Thank you. Because of his size. He's not a big guy.
No argument there.
And today's quarterback, plays a different game. I mean, he does not compare well physically to somebody like Hurts or Jackson or the kid out of Kansas City or whatever. He just doesn't match up well.
True. Yeah, I get that. It doesn't take. It definitely takes all kinds too. I mean, I think we've had this discussion ad nauseum, even between Ivan and I, over the last few weeks about how the quarterback position has evolved. However, to something beyond what Tom Brady. I mean, I've seen and heard so many people talking about how slow Tom Brady looks, and when they got pasted by the Niners this weekend, that crowd grew even louder. And you almost have to look more too at the mental ability of a guy like Bryce Young to keep himself out of harm's way, to still use the speed when he can and do everything that he can on the field, but try to keep himself upright. I mean, that's obviously the ultimate goal of any quarterback.
Sure. I mean, there's no doubt that the Texans are going to take a quarterback. I'm just not convinced. Yeah, I'm not. Well, and they've got 2 first-round picks, maybe even 2 top 10 picks, depending on how Cleveland finishes up. But we project right now at number 1 and number 12. A good quarterback will still be there at 12. So if there is somebody who they just can't resist at 1, there's still going to be 3 or 4 good quarterbacks on the board at 12, and maybe even at 10. So, but I'm not convinced that they have to take Alabama's quarterback first. And if you go back, look up Mel Kiper. Are you a Mel Kiper fan?
Sure.
Check what he has to say about where he thinks the Texans ought to go. He's pushing for Kentucky's quarterback.
Really? Okay.
Because the guy is much more solid, much stronger arm, much a bigger guy. He's not as quick as far as decision making is concerned, but you can teach decision making, right? How to make a better decision. You can't teach how to be 4 inches taller and 40 pounds heavier.
And Will Levis faster. For Kentucky is an interesting, thought. It's always hard to gauge on a team that has pieces kind of already in place, and where are you plugging in a quarterback into? Like Mahomes obviously came into a great situation because the Chiefs had some pieces already there. I don't know that the Texans are at that spot yet. So do they need a leader? I know they've got Dameon Pierce, and he's a great building block offensively.
Yeah, but our number 1 pick from last year, remember, didn't play this year.
True.
Okay, and so he's going to be a weapon. Mechie, is that his last name? Mechie?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's going to be a weapon, and he's, by all reports, he's healthy and he'll be ready to go. So if you got Mechie and you get a strong quarterback, number 1, pick a strong tight end, and there'll be some good tight ends available for you in the top 12 picks there. Pick a good tight end. All of a sudden, you're a team with some real weapons, and then you've still got a bunch of picks left. You start filling in some of the holes that you have on your offensive and defensive lines. And all of a sudden, now you're talking about a team that's 50-50 next year.
Maybe you go sign a guy like Jimmy G next year, because the Niners seem to be finding little diamonds in the rough at this point with Brock Purdy. That's been a great story.
Well, you want to talk about stories. How about, and it happened the night after this show last week, how about LA versus Las Vegas?
Oh, Baker Mayfield was just ridiculous.
And to see him cheering with his new team after the game.
Headbutting without a helmet on.
Oh my gosh. And just, I mean, he was so pumped. You had to feel good for the guy,
for sure.
He was just, it was one of those moments of this is what makes baseball or football great,
and to do it against the Raiders too, I think was a lot of salt